The First Amendment of the United States Constitution states, elegantly and unequivocally, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or of the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. George Washington said, "If men are to be precluded from offering their sentiments on a matter, which may invoke the most serious and alarming consequences that can invite the consideration of mankind, reason is of no use to us. The freedom of speech may be taken away, and dumb and silent as we may be led, like sheep to the slaughter." As Washington understood, a free democratic society can only get to the truth, can only keep itself free, can only prevent its collapse or its destruction if people who disagree with each other can discuss the most important matters honestly, honorably, and with nuance. Civil discourse between members of opposing political sides is the lifeblood of a thriving democracy. It's the golden thread weaving together a healthy civic culture. Further, it's the only way for citizens of a country to prevent a collapse of civic and social bonds, an end to trust in freedom and democratic self-governance, a turn towards totalitarian ideologies, and ultimately, a balkanization of society into competing groups, each more hateful and tribal than the next. Conversations across lines of disagreement are the best way, the only way, to create new knowledge in science, in philosophy, in literature, in art, in theology, in ethics, because they encourage us to counter our own confirmation biases. This is no different in politics. In fact, in politics it's especially important because, as the founders of the United States understood, a flourishing democracy requires freedom of expression. The lack of nuanced civil political dialogue today between people with different views is an enormous problem, I think, one that fosters resentment, hatred, and cruelty. In short, it creates polarization, a political climate that I believe is deeply unhealthy and antithetical to American ideals of democracy and free expression. Polarization affects all of us. For me, it generally means that I'm looked at with derision when I say that I want to consider both sides of an issue before making up my mind. I'm often assumed to hold all of the opinions of a person's political opponents if I disagree with that person on a couple of issues, and in some cases, when talking to very convinced partisans, I'm assumed to have deep personal flaws for daring to consider that someone they disagree with politically could be right about an issue, could be honorable, could be telling the truth, or even could be deserving of the right to free expression. I hope to go into the political realm and protect Americans' civil liberties, and one way that polarization affects me is that I observe shocking numbers of otherwise reasonable people saying that the rights and liberties protected in the Constitution, and even the values they hold most dear for themselves, such as freedom or the presumption of innocence, should not be extended to their political opponents. Virtually everyone is impacted by the constant polarization of everything, by a pervasive trend of self-segregation into politically homogeneous communities, and by social media outrage culture amplified by the polarized echo chambers into which we're all immersed. It's becoming a more and more regular occurrence for people to sever ties with their former loved ones, family, and friends over what are often mainstream political opinions. The direct result of a lack of civil conversations across partisan lines, polarization affects the entirety of America's political dialogue and an ever-increasing amount of America's family and social lives. When I first started thinking about the importance of civil dialogue to combat political polarization, I worked on deconstructing it within myself, reflecting on how it impacted me and why I have now chosen to eschew all remnants of it. I also encouraged others to consider whether their own partisan bias, if they have one, clouds their rational open-mindedness towards opposing views, and whether it would improve the civic tapestry of their relationships and of our country if they extended others the open-mindedness and open-heartedness that they want for themselves. I started talking with anyone and everyone I could find about their political views and worked to learn the reasons and the values behind them. I was struck by one overwhelming conclusion. Across all sorts of political differences, our values as Americans are almost universally identical, our hearts are unified, and our dreams are interwoven. Through talking with a number of people, making friends with people who hold a wide range of political opinions, avidly seeking out opportunities to talk with and learn from people with whom I disagree, and always seeking out the best arguments on each side of an issue before making up my mind, I have come to many, many wonderful conclusions. I have learned from and taught friends of mine, from Trump-supporting nationalists to revolutionary socialists, to approach civic discussions with a humble, respectful, and open-minded perspective. I have learned to never assume bad faith simply because someone disagrees with me, and I have patently refused the pervasive idea that if someone holds different political views than mine, that person must be stupid, brainwashed, or evil. As I engaged in more civil discussions with people with whom I disagreed, my life has become far better. I have felt myself become much more open-minded, more tolerant of others, more emotionally mature, more forgiving, happier with my life, and more secure in my values. I am so grateful for the existence of civic conversations across political differences, for without them, many of my best friendships wouldn't exist. I'm going to keep talking to people with whom I disagree, keep hearing out their concerns, keep listening to their arguments, and keep providing them with reasonable, opposing arguments made in good faith and encouraging them not to fall into the rigid, hateful, sweeping thought patterns of polarization. I'll keep having conversations with people who are very solidified in the belief that most people who vote differently than them are evil, brainwashed, or seek to destroy everything that they love most. One of my role models, in fact, is Daryl Davis, an African-American man who successfully de-radicalized roughly 200 Klan members through meeting them and having face-to-face conversations. Faced with a man who did not represent their narrow, biased perceptions of an enemy, those 200 men left their former ideology, submitting their robes to Davis and shaking his hand as a friend. I believe in the human spirit, and I believe that every person has the potential for great good. I believe that every person can be de-radicalized, no matter how totalizing their ideology or how long they've been within its claws. I will continue to treat everyone with dignity and respect, to take their concerns seriously and to listen to what they have to say, and to meet them with good faith opposing arguments to consider. I truly hope that the civil cross-ideology conversations I cherish will play a part in successfully de-radicalizing people from toxic extremist ideologies such as white supremacism, and from more mainstream toxic ideologies like the virulent, vitriolic hatred of one's political opponents. I hope to play my part in creating a more forgiving, open-minded, open-hearted democratic culture. George Washington said, "The freedom of speech may be taken away, and dumb and silent we may be led, like sheep to the slaughter." Let us speak with each other with honesty and nuance, with open hearts and open minds, with kindness and understanding. Let us protect the free speech of our friends by defending the free speech of our enemies. Let us together protect our community, our society, and our country from becoming divided against itself and collapsing under the weight of tribalism and polarization. Through engaging in respectful, civil conversations with people with whom we disagree, let us prevent the people of the United States from being turned against their brothers and sisters and being balkanized into tribal enclaves, lest we all become so entrenched in our own ideologies and so averse to different views that we all risk being led, as Washington warned, like sheep to the slaughter. Thank you.